my first deck profile, so don't yell at me, comments section. You know what you're thinking? You're like, this guy's a scrub. He doesn't know what he's doing, and you'd be absolutely 100% correct. But what I do know is Doki Doki. Rejected. It's a Jama in the jar. Okay. His effect is simple. Just discard a rock, summon out a rock from deck with the same level and attribute. Straightforward, simple. You can get rid of dead cards in hand. In fact, sorry.
There you go.
In fact, you can even pitch one of him in hand to possibly get one of the tuners out. So very decent card, let's say. Now onto the tuners. They all have a similar effect, different special summoning conditions. Endless's effect is similar to that of Cyber Dragon, being that if I control no monsters, my opponent controls a monster, I can special summon from the hand. He's also level 4, which can be quite useful for an XYZ summon into going to stuff like Gallant. Researcher, just if you control a rock monster, easy to special summon, same effect as these. And if you control an Adamancipator monster, you can special summon them. Now, if you don't know their effect, which I can't blame you for, they excavate the top 5 cards of the deck, and then if you have a level 4 or lower rock monster that you did excavate, you can special summon it. Well, it has to be level 4 or lower, of course, but still. Now, onto the combo extension of the deck. Sorry, those were the starters. Forgot to mention that. But you have 2 Gigantus. I wouldn't play him at 3 simply because you won't always be able to, have the graveyard set. But when you do, he's a pretty good card. So the nice level 4 can help you get into, again, stuff like your XCEs and sometimes some of your Synchros. Now your bricks, you run quite a bit of these, and indeed, yeah, it kind of sucks when you draw into all of them, but this deck is consistent enough to not even care about, because remember, you'll be continuously excavating, putting stuff on the bottom, so not much to worry about there. 3 Guardian, because Nibiru is your mortal enemy. You must not be Nibiru. Revival Golem. So Revival Golem, basically just send them off of your 4 copies of Foolish. I say 4 because there's cards with a similar effect, and I'll get to that later. You're really going to want to use him for the I Send Him to Grave, Chain Link 1, well, not Chain Link 1, but chain off of that, spec him, and then use him for, again, an XYZs or Synchros, or maybe even Weathering Soldier. He helps with the fossil part. Whoops.
There you go.
Okay, Weathering Soldier. Well, you're playing Adamancipator Fossil, so it's a 3 of, and you don't really have to worry about it that much because, again, with all the excavating and sending to grave going around, not much need to worry. Even if you do have them in hand, if you have a Doki Doki, you can easily turn your lemons into lemonade. 2 Dragite and 1 Raptite. Dragite's effect is, and this is the one you want to pay really close attention to, is when special summoned by the effect of a Adamancipator card. Keep in mind it says card, meaning if you revive it off of their Adamancipator signs, you'll be able to draw a card. Again, level 4, good. He does something similar, but instead of being a draw card, it's just being able to put a rock monster from your hand or graveyard on top of your deck. Not as good, but can come up in certain situations. Now, as for your hand traps, you're running 3 Ash, simply because your deck has space for it. It's a good hand trap, why not? You may want to switch it out depending on what deck you face, but all around, Ash is going to work. In fact, I won a few games off of Ash because, again, she's a good card. Now, continuing onto the 4 Monster Reborn and 4 Foolish I talk about, first let's start off with the 4 Monster Reborn. Adamancipator's Signs. Basically, Monster Reborn for any rock monster. A better magnet reverse in this case, and if it happens to be, let's say, a Adamancipator card that you end up reviving, you get a small choice of putting a rock monster on top of your deck. Now, if you weren't paying attention, this deck excavates, so you could use that to help help with your combo. Monster Reborn being Monster Reborn, it's your 4th copy, essentially, and, well, a good staple. Now let's go on to the fossil spells. You have 2 Time Stream, and if you don't know what Time Stream does, I can't blame you. It's as simple as I got my Fossil Fusion monster out, I tribute said monster, and I get one that's 2 levels higher. It also has another effect, but that effect does not often come up, so you don't really have to worry about it. But if you want to, continue to read on your own time. Now talking about the Foolish Burials, even though this is a hard once per turn, and its effect has come up once its secondary effect has come up once for me before, and that's if Fossil Fusion's in the grave, you can draw a card when activated, of course. Other than that, it acts as kind of a mathematician for rocks and in the form of a spell card. And you say, well, it's not exactly a Foolish Burial. I know that. It's just most of your cards. Actually, yeah, all of your cards are level 4 or lower, so it is. Again, I would keep an eye on the secondary effect, because let's say you have Fossil Fusion in hand, you may be able to get another draw out of that. And speaking of Fossil Fusion, now this one's an interesting card, being that depending on the materials you use in you and your opponent's graveyard, depends on the fusion monster summoned. But you can mess with your opponent's graveyard by banishing their stuff and some of your stuff. And let's say they have a rock monster in grave, well, that's just a bonus for you, because you're banishing nothing from grave. But this is, again, it's almost like Invocation, but for fossils, is what I'd compare it to. Very simple card. And indeed, there's a secondary effect, but that, again, doesn't come off very often. Now, off to the extra deck, as to say. You run 1 Fossil Warrior Skull King, 1 Fossil Warrior Skull Knight, 1 Fossil Warrior Skull Bone, 1 Fossil Dragon Skull Gios, and 1 Fossil Dragon Skull Gar. Now, depending on what you banish, depends on what you get. If you have a Time Stream in hand, well, you can move up from this to this to this to this, and it just keeps going. Now, my favorite thing to do is, let's say you do have the Fossil Fusion in hand, not the Fossil Fusion, but the Time Stream. Activate your Fossil Fusion to summon out this guy, Time Stream it into this, banish this to get a Time Stream to hand, and then, again, activate Time Stream to get into him. Now, why he may be important is, I have to read this card again, sorry. He didn't come off often, but does, well, does piercing damage, and any damage it does to said opponent is doubled. On top of that, well, let's be honest, it's a pretty good effect. As well as there's another effect of you can switch the opponent's attack and defense around, which, although depending on the format, may vary. But it can get you a few ones. Other than that, most of these you just use them for this, to this, to this. Most of them just, they're good cards, and they do come up often enough. It's just, you mainly just want to get into him. Of course, I have a bone to pick with his design simply because it's a T-Rex. It's just a fucking T. The other ones have creative design, but this is just sitting there. It's just T-Rex. Yep. It bothers me. Okay. As for your Adamancipator Synchros, you're gonna get a Raptite, a Leonite, and a Dragonite. Now, this can be field clear, and it's a non-targeting, non-destruction removal. So let's say you bait out something like Dragoon. Well, now you can get rid of that Dragoon. Leonite is also, of course, you have to excavate the top 5. You know, as Adamancipator check, depending on the rocks you get, depends on how much monsters you can send back. And he's pretty thick, you know, 3k attack. Leonite. Excavate top 5 cards, and you can add an Adamancipator card from your... out of the ones excavated, you can add the Adamancipator card to your hand. Now, usually you'll be adding a tuner or maybe a crystal, but let's say you have signs, well, that's good for, again, more combos, more stuff revived. It's good. But this one is definitely, I'd say, the best one out of them all, simply because she can summon, well, she's like the tuners, except she can actually summon the tuners themselves. So you can, let's say you summon her, activate her excavation effect, summon one of the tuners, activate this tuner's effect, and go on from there. And then there's a Herald of the Arclight, just in case you're going first or just want to summon them out. It's a good card and can win you games, simply because your opponent sends stuff from their hand or even deck to the grave. Well, it's banished now, so... Now, on to the links. We have Helki Fibrax, because this is a Synchro deck. If I don't run this, you'll make fun of me. Unicorn to use, well, set material, to spin a card. That's maybe being a problem. And a Saryuja because he's Saryuja. this deck extra kind of has some space to work with. And I'd say it's definitely with this. Now, if you'd prefer not to have a unicorn, but something else, by all means, and maybe a synchro tuner, by all means, go right ahead. I'm just saying, since this deck's more of an aggressive deck, I'd rather have a unicorn. That is personal preference, mind you. And then there's the XCs. Abyss Dweller, just in case you're forced to go first and just want to lock down the opponent's graveyard. Gallant to search rock, and a card that you don't see often, Vespinato. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't know what the hell this goddamn rejected Beedrill is here, but simply, let's say you have a level 4, he kind of acts like an infinity. You can put that on top, just slap him right there, and maybe inflict some piercing battle damage. He's just good to get out bigger number after you've used Gallant. That's all he's there for. Again, maybe you want to put something different in, that's up to you, that's your choice. But by all means, I'm going to stick with this. It worked, so hey. And that is my extra deck. Now I'm onto the side deck. Now, I'm not a good, well, I'd say I'm a good Yugioh player, not a great one, but I definitely need to learn how to side still, because some things are like, what do I side? Do I want to side? I have, for the traps in side deck, I have a Resonance and a Relief. Acts kind of like a, let me think of the card here, well, I'll just explain what it does. Tribute an Adamancipator and destroy that many cards on the field, equal to the amount distributed, plus 1. So if you tribute 1, you get 2. If you tribute 2, you get 3. If you tribute 3, you get it. Resonance, simply if you control a Adamancipator Synchro, which you most certainly will, you can negate monster effects. So he's pretty good. Although that does remind me of, you should be aware of the Synchro's secondary effects. Dryagites is if you have water in grave, you can negate a spell. Raptite being banished card from grave. And Leonite, I didn't read that one that far, but I don't have any fire, so why bother? I do have Ash, but eh. Now, onto the monsters, we have Overload, in case you want to, in case you're worried about summons. You have Mr. Sandman, in case of traps, and you have, well, Trump's Pride and Joy, the Wall. He negate spells. Now, depending on the deck, depends on the Quackmares, you're going to want to switch it out. But again, I'm not good at this game, so I didn't really know what to switch out. So, hey. Anyway, you're gonna be like, but that's only 14 cards, and I say, yes, it is. I didn't know what one of to put in there, okay? But that is my deck profile. If you did enjoy it, please consider subscribing to Todd. He's a great man, he's fun to play against, and overall, it's a good channel. So, see you hopefully soon with another deck profile.